What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Hopefully you had an enjoyable weekend, but we're back to Monday, so let's talk about some video game news. First, I do want to remind you that the new 2DS XL drawing is still on. We're not to 50,000 subscribers yet, so if you're new, subscribe and then enter at the link below for your chance to win a brand new 2DS XL. And with that, let's get started. And the first thing we're going to talk about, there's some interesting stuff going on with Nintendo and Switch games. In particular, apparently there are games that are coming up that people aren't able to talk about but are visiting in San Francisco. Now, I think a lot of you have probably seen CND's video, for example, where he talks about going to San Francisco to demo an unreleased Switch game. That's specifically unreleased, not unannounced, unreleased. That could be a couple games, but if I had to narrow it down right now, they can't talk about it apparently till tomorrow, where we'll see videos from, I'm sure, several YouTubers, because it wasn't just CND who was invited out. There were a couple others, and what we're probably going to see are a bunch of videos going up all at once of them demoing this game. There are two games I probably have it narrowed down to. It's either Mario and Rabbids, because that's coming out at the end of the month, so they want to have a big marketing push, or if it's Nintendo flying them out, which is what he has said, it's probably Mario Odyssey, where they're showing off different worlds, they're letting them demo different worlds, or maybe there's a new feature they can't talk about. I'm not sure what feature it could be, maybe it's some kind of multiplayer, who knows at this point, but what's interesting is Nintendo is leveraging the YouTube community heavily right now going into the Switch, something I don't remember them doing with things like the Wii U. So this is an interesting turnabout for Nintendo, and I'm curious now as to what we're going to see, because if it's that important that they can't even mention the title of the game, it has to be something pretty good, something new or unannounced that we haven't seen yet in this game. I thought it would be Mario Rabbids, however, there doesn't seem to be an embargo since Peanut Butter Gamer was invited out for the same thing, except it was by Ubisoft for Mario Rabbids, which he posted 4 days ago, so there didn't seem to be an embargo on that like this has an embargo for Tuesday. Either way, very interesting to see what game, mode, feature, whatever it is that they were invited out for, so I'll keep an eye on it. Should be pretty fun to see what all of these YouTubers experienced while they were there. One, with Nintendo in the background, because if they're vlogging, they're probably catching all kinds of interactions with the Nintendo representatives. And then two, of course, the game that they're there for. So it should be interesting to see. Now, I also want to talk about this interesting news coming out about a third-party AAA game that is apparently being ported to the Switch. It's very interesting. Now, this was originally found by Doctray81, and then it spread throughout the internet like crazy, and everyone's been looking into it and kind of coming up with their own theory as to, well, what AAA game is being ported. Now, what happened was a profile linked on LinkedIn was found, and at the bottom it says a few things about porting a game to the Switch. Now, what happened was a link over at LinkedIn for a profile of what appears to be a developer listed a few things about the Switch, specifically things like work in progress, porting a AAA title to Nintendo Switch, re-implement the renderer with Nintendo's native graphics API, that would be NVN through NVIDIA, design and implement the low-level mechanism of graphics resource management and threading, exploit the performance advantages of the Vulkan-like API, which of course they're referring to NVN in this case, to really make the game work well on the Switch. Of course, using those low-level APIs will get you more performance out of a machine that wouldn't get that kind of performance if, say, it was running like Windows or something, right? Like, that's why you see game consoles can run games better than a lot of similar hardware in computers because, well, the APIs are much better in the game consoles. They're designed specifically for a set level of hardware. It's not just a big range of hardware. Now, the studio working on this AAA game is called Virtuos, and they've worked on a few other things, including Batman Return to Arkham, which of course was the compilation of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City that made its way to the PS4 and the Xbox One. And then they also worked hand in hand for Final Fantasy XII, the remaster that we saw for the PS4. So now people are pretty much just trying to guess anything. They've even ported, apparently, Injustice 1 to Android devices, although that wasn't as much of a port as much as they kind of built it for the ground up for Android devices. It wasn't the same game like a straight port would be, but they still managed to move Injustice 1 over in some regard. So now people are guessing a few things. They're saying, oh, maybe Final Fantasy XII is coming over. Maybe. They could also be Final Fantasy X and X-2 coming over. That would be interesting because it's been a while since a mainline Final Fantasy game has come to a Nintendo system. It's been a long time. But then, of course, there is really what's staring everyone in the face, which is the Batman Return to Arkham collection, as Doctray has mentioned. I even saw someone mention Injustice 2, which would be very interesting to see on the Switch, although I don't think that is something that they are really really pushing for. I don't think that's something that WB is really concerned about right now. If anything, they would consider moving Batman over. That does make a lot of sense, considering those games ran fine on the 360 and the PS3, and really, it runs on Unreal Engine 4 now with their new collections, so yeah, that probably seems like the most sensible port. However, I would love to see Final Fantasy XII come over to the Switch. That would be really neat. Would it? I don't know. I don't know what the licensing is there. I don't really know what Sony has control of there with Final Fantasy XII Remastered on the PS4. Either way, I'm curious to see when this will be announced and how far out this project is really going to go, because this might be something that has been discovered now, but it might not be ready for announcement till next year even, so I guess we'll have to see what Virtuos is working on with the Switch. And after that big shipment of Switches went out for Splatoon 2 week, and then a bunch of Switches the following week, you'd figured, well, maybe Nintendo Switches are starting to be more common in Japan, and they're kind of getting their fill, and it's not as crazy as it was, a month ago when people were lining up 3,000 people at a time outside just for a chance to get a Switch, just to buy a Switch. It doesn't look like it. Looks like the fact that Splatoon 2 is out, and maybe the idea of Dragon Quest XI eventually being on the system, and then of course we find out that Dragon Quest X version 4 is coming. Well, it looks like that line has only gotten longer, because it's been spotted that as many as 5,000 people are lining up for a chance to buy a Switch. So, of course, people are taking to Twitter, posting all these pictures of people lining up outside of Big Camera, and it's insane, right? People are still lining up, that many people, despite hundreds of thousands of Switches. I think 200,000 Switches went out to people in the past 2 weeks in Japan, but it's still super hot. Everybody still really wants a Switch, and honestly, if people are willing to wait outside in a line like that just for a chance to get a Switch, which, by the way, people are saying about 10% of the line was able to get one, so that's about 500 Switches that went out. There's a ton of people who aren't going to line up, who want a Switch. So yeah, the craze for the Switch in Japan is at a massive high right now, and I don't know if it's ever going to come down with the fact that Mario is coming out for it, Mario Odyssey. Raving Rabbids might not be as big there, but Mario Odyssey definitely is massive there. You have Fire Emblem Warriors that will probably be pretty big there. And then, of course, the looming announcement of Pokemon, where there's going to be a mainline Pokemon game that is obviously going to be jumping from the 3DS then to the Switch, which is going to sell it like crazy in Japan. So no, this craze for the Switch is not going to be dying anytime soon in Japan. As much as people probably want to tell you, well, the Switch craze is dying, games aren't coming out. No, it's super popular in Japan. And again, if Japan got 200,000 units over the past 2 weeks, I want to see what the MPD says for the United States, because for all these systems that Japan is getting, the United States gets more than Japan generally. So yeah, this is going to be interesting when we get those MPD numbers for July even. In our last bit of news today, we're going to talk about kind of a controversial subject that has come up around Shadow of War, the sequel to Shadow of Mordor, which, by the way, was an awesome game. If you've never played Shadow of Mordor, go pick it up. It's definitely worth a playthrough. It's a lot of fun, open world style game, and I really like the Nemesis system. I thought that was really cool. But of course, it appears that they are kind of they're going to be going the direction of, well, industry standards in this case, right? For bigger studios who are putting a lot of money into these big games, they're going to include microtransactions in their game. And how is that going to work? Well, they're going to have a market that is connected to the internet, so you cannot go on this market unless you're connected to the internet, which to me makes sense since you probably have to process a credit card anyway when you want to buy this stuff. So that's fine. I think a lot of people heard that there was a possible, well, you need the internet to play the game, and that's not the case. It's just for these market transactions. And there were a lot of sites, it was kind of funny, had these massive headlines of Shadow of War needs the internet connection to play online. Threw a lot of people off, but it looks like that's not the case. You can play the whole single player yourself offline, but if you want to get ahead in the game quickly, you'll need internet connection. So here's how this is going to work. You can buy gold, which is a currency in the market, and then you can buy loot boxes that will then give you orcs, legendary orcs. Basically, it'll let you build your army faster. It's something you don't have to then run out into the game and then accomplish by meeting up with orcs and then conquering them and then bring them into your army. It's interesting because what you're essentially doing is paying money to not have to play some of the game, which is a very odd concept if you really kind of drill it down to its bedrock and think about it. You're essentially paying the developers more money for the game so that you don't have to play parts of the game, right? Really what this is doing, though, I guess, is speeding you along so you don't have to run out and like grind away, right? You get the item and that's it. Instant gratification, I guess you could say. I have no idea what the exchange rate is for any of this stuff, and that's what's going to be interesting. How expensive is it to get these loot boxes, right? These chests that you get and then you open and there's a chance for this orc or that orc. I don't know. It's very interesting, though, that a lot of games are going to start going this way. I've been talking about this for months, haven't I? Games are going to start figuring out ways to get more money from you if they can pass that initial purchase price, because they don't want to raise the initial purchase price right now from $60. Remember how from the PS2 and the Xbox era, we went from 50 to 60 with the 360? But then from the 360, the Xbox One, PS3 to PS4, costs for development have gone up, but prices of the games have not. So unless we go up to $70 and then, you know, that works out and you don't have microtransactions in the game, a lot of people would rather have microtransactions than just not buy them. As long as you can still earn them and it looks like you still can, I'm okay with it. It's just, it's an odd concept, isn't it? To spend money to skip parts of the game. It feels weird, but hey, if that's what you want to do, spend more money to do that, then yeah, you're allowed to do that. It's not something I would really do. And that's it for Newswave today, guys. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about any of the stuff we talked about today, specifically these Nintendo games that we're starting to see rumors of, right? We obviously know that something's going on in San Francisco with a Nintendo game, whether it is Rabbids, whether it's Mario Odyssey, whether it is even the Metroid game on the 3DS, Samus Returns. It could be that as well. Those are all games that could use that marketing push online with social media. That would make sense to me. Also, let me know think about the AAA game being ported over. What do you think that is? Is that Batman, or is that Final Fantasy, or is that something else maybe I forgot about? I'm curious what your take is. And then also let me know about this microtransaction in single-player games. Does it bother you? Or, well, it's not multiplayer, so they won't affect me when I'm playing the way I want to. That's it for now, guys. I'll see you next time.